From the mid-1800s, generations of children in southern Maryland received a basic but solid education in the state's many one-room schoolhouses. When schools were consolidated in the early 1930s, most of these humble but important little buildings were left and forgotten, along with the many memories they housed. Thankfully, because of the foresight and hard work of a few dedicated people, some of the school bells once again ring out. Today, a whole new generation is invited to experience a typical day at school from a time gone by.
I lived at Parker's Wharf for a number of years, and I attended school number 8, District 1, one-room school in Island Creek, and I attended that school for a very enjoyable period of my life. We had no buses in those days, and so the mode of travel was walk.
I walked to school about 3 miles.
There were days that I walked to school, and there were days that I probably went with the teacher of the school because she lived very, very close to me.
Elementary schools by law were built about 3 miles apart. And the reason for that was the founding fathers of the act decided that a 6-year-old person should not walk farther than 1.5 miles up to 2 miles to get to school. We never had a fat person in school. We all walked and we were in shape when we got there, I'll tell you.
Even in snowy weather, rainy weather, we walked to school anyway.
Yeah, we had a horse, his name was Old Boat Waters, he remembered his name. But anyway, we would ride him to school some days, and we were a little bit late because he could get us there a little bit earlier than what we ordinarily walking, and we'd just turn him loose and he would go on home, and usually there's somebody home that would take him and put him in the pasture or do something with him.
There would have been a pot-bellied stove in the school. That would be our source of heat.
There was no central heating. It was all wood stoves, and the boys, the upperclassmen we called them, from the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, they were actually responsible for cutting the wood and bringing the wood into school.
The bigger boys were assigned to take care of the wood because they had a woodshed. So the boys, 2 boys would be assigned to go take care of the wood, split the wood, and get it ready, and go in and put it in the stove.
The school day was from 9 till 3. And we would be at school a bit before 9, and Miss Grace would ring that bell, and we'd go into the school.
When the teacher rang the bell, you'd take your seat. And then we began the day by someone reading the scripture in the Holy Bible.
We say our prayers and we sing and our song and read the Bible.
Then following that, there would be the Pledge of Allegiance. That was without fail. That happened every day.
When I was in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, I would have had penmanship and the basics of reading. The basics of arithmetic.
Yeah, we had a spelling book, and we had a reader, and we had a history book, and geography.
We had reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I guess the one thing that I enjoyed most was the writing, really. I enjoyed that, and I can say unhesitatingly there was no subjects I recall in my early years in school that I disliked.
The older did help the younger, and that had to be because the teacher could never teach all those subjects. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, geometry, spelling, and so on down the line.
A couple boys that were always bothering me. You know, I had sort of longish hair, and they'd pick at it and pull, and then they'd tease me and all these things. So it was a little store across from them, and Mr. Simon had it. He was a very old gentleman, but very kind. And I had gotten 2 new pencils. And that day, the boys just bothered me to death. So I took a pencil and I cracked it down across his head, and the pencil broke. So at lunchtime, I went over to Mr. Simon's and I said, Mr. Simon, your pencils aren't any good. I'd like another one. He said, what did you do with it, Sarah Catherine? I said, I cracked so-and-so over the head. He said, I'll give you 2 more for that one.
I guess there's one thing that has always created a little bit of a concern for me, and yet when you look back at the time, you were kind of faultless. But we had a completely dual system in those days. Schools, lunchrooms, what few there were around, stores, everything was completely segregated.
In those days, the colored children had their schoolhouse, and we had our schoolhouse. We didn't go to their school, and they didn't come to our school.
We did not have, at any time did we have new textbooks. Our textbooks were handed down to us from the white schools, and they were ragged, torn up, and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes many of us would sigh because of the fact that we could not read exactly the words that were in the books because the books were so torn up or worn out.
Our educational system was totally segregated. However, we enjoyed playing together before school started in the mornings.
I was young then, all I knew was play.
And we'd always try to get there by 8:15 so that we could all gather together and play baseball together. At 8:45, our black students always went up to what was called then Pink School because it was painted pink, and it was nearly a mile up the road.
We would play Annie over. There would be a team on each side of the squall, and we used the ball like a dodgeball. You would throw the ball over the squall. Someone on the opposite side of the squall would catch the ball. Then they would run around and try to get those of us that had thrown the ball over, and in that way you could eventually eliminate a team.
One of our favorite games was Fox and Hounds. The fox was always chosen by one of the older students in the school, and so he was selected about 10 o'clock in the morning. And the fox would always have to tie up bits of paper because that was his trail. But anybody could be a hound who wanted to run. And so the fox got a minute start. You could count up to, I think we counted to 30. And then we'd start on our fox hound, and the fox would start and he'd drop his bits of paper rather close together. But he wasn't dumb, so he knew that the more he spread these out, the harder job the hounds had.
They had dodgeball, and that was always fun. I really loved that. Today, I wish it was more prevalent because it was a game of good coordination. You had to know how to duck that ball.
Our water supply came from a dear neighbor's well. 2 of us, girls or boys, were allowed to go over for a bucket of water several times a day.
My mother used to make me carry a little folding metal cup to school with me each day. So I had my own drinking cup, but they had a dipper in the bucket where you dipped water out and put it in your own cup.
They did build an outside toilet for the girls.
It was a wooden structure, and as I recall, there were 3 holes, a hole being different sizes. One would be for, say, for first graders. I don't know whether the kids went in and measured which hole they were going to sit on, but I know girls would like to go in and fill all the holes and sit there and talk, get away from the boys, so we could just go in and talk and be very private.
I honestly don't remember the boys having any place because it was a wooded area and there were plenty of trees around. Recess is over, back in school you'd go.
If you finished your lesson ahead of time, you could goof off and listen to those in the classes ahead of you. If you paid attention, you could learn a lot just by listening.
The teacher would ring the bell again. It was lunchtime.
I used to enjoy a good lunch of a good old biscuit that was soft in the morning, that somebody would put their thumb in and fill it with syrup. So at lunchtime, that was a really good biscuit to eat at that time.
And we had 30 minutes at lunch, and of course it never took you 30 minutes to eat a sandwich. Miss Ireland at that time would ring the bell, and then back in school we'd go, and I think that we stayed in school until mid-afternoon, and we got another 10-minute recess. In the afternoon, she'd ring the bell for school to let out, and I think that was about 3 o'clock.
I cannot think of anything I did not like about the one room school. I loved every moment I was there. And even though I was a tiny child, I can remember the sadness that when I had to leave that school.
It gave the community an identity, and that identity of the community was lost as soon as consolidation took place. Because things happened not only around the church, but it happened more so around that one-room elementary school, and that was the identification of the community. We were Allen Creek, and we knew we were Allen Creek.